Today we're going to talk about VA and termite inspection reports. New states have been added to the list. Why the listing information matters and how it can affect your closing and delay things. And we just beat a few companies by well over 0.5% in rate. All right, let's get into it. Hello, my name is Mike Florin. I'm the owner of Low Cost Mortgage. Today's your weekly update for the first week of July, which is July 2nd, 2025. Okay, so first thing we're going to go over is just a quick thing on rates, right? Government is high-ish fives. In fact, I've locked several in the middle high-ish fives with no discount points. And I don't want to give an exact rate. The rate is in your email, so go ahead and check it there. Okay, because I've got to disclose a bunch of stuff in it. Conventional, you're looking at low sixes, right? Rates are downward trending. Let me pop open a chart here. We'll go over my left side. And this chart here, we're going to show some instability here. I'm going to, block off or square off or circle this area here. This is where your instability was. It was tariffs. And if you notice, I'm going to draw a line right here. That is where stability is created in the 10-year Treasury. And with stability, you create competition within the lending outlets, the lending investors. And as those investors want more deals, when they know what the cost of money is, they're going to start undercutting each other, and that's going to start bringing your rates down. And yeah, it's great. So the last 7 weeks now, we've been seeing nothing but rates coming down, which is great. So recent successes, we beat companies. I picked up a loan last night. It was 11 p.m. And we beat this other company by 0.5 percentage point and no points. And they were higher with points. And it was crazy. Not really crazy. It's pretty normal. But the amount of money other lending companies are charging is just astronomical. It's kind of stupid. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of technical stuff. So first and foremost, VA appraisals. It used to have a 10-day rule. If the VA appraisal is picked up, they had 10 days to deliver that inspection report, the appraisal report. Well, they no longer have that. What they have is if it's in city limits, it's going to be 7 days. And if it's outside of city limits, if it's rural, they have up to 14 days. Now, for us, about half of my loan volume is VA. We do a lot of VA loans. And probably because we're in a lot of states with military bases. I'm a veteran, and veterans speak to each other in a very specific way. With that being said, we have seen VA appraisals coming back in 2 or 3 days sometimes. It's pretty incredible how fast they're coming in. So on the listing side, on the buying side, you need to be prepared for that. Now, we've seen conventional appraisals come in fast too, and we've seen FHA, which follows conventional in that regard, that appraisals are coming back really, really, really fast. So you need to plan around that, but we've also had some come in longer, and I'm going to talk about that next, okay? Or not next, but at the end of the video. Termite inspection reports are now needed in several new states, and one of those new states is the state of Colorado. Now, we're licensed in several states. We do loans in several states, and we've been doing loans in states that have termite requirements for many, many years. With that being said, on a VA home loan that now requires an inspection report in the states of Colorado and several others, I'm going to list them. I don't know, somewhere on the screen, I'm going to list them. It's very, very important that you realtors get several. You probably want 2 or 3, maybe 4 termite inspection companies, and they need to fill out a form NPMA 33. NPMA 33. I'm going to put that on the screen here. Now, that's the form the VA requires the termite inspector or pest inspector, it's actually called a wood-destroying insect inspection report, to fill out. They have to fill it out. All VA loans in all of these states now require this form to be filled out by a licensed / have all their certifications in place inspection company. This gets extremely complicated, so I am going to overly simplify it. If you have a listing and that listing is legally a single family home and it has been repurposed somewhere somehow as a duplex, 3plex, 4plex, whatever, call us. We're going to walk you through this as it applies specifically to your situation. But it's very complicated, and you might create a problem that will delay your closing. Okay, again, recording this for the 5th time. going to overly simplify this. We have two houses. In both cases, it was a house with a finished basement. Okay, so the background has changed because I've re-recorded this quite a few times. Okay, so you've got to be careful as a listing agent on how you're describing your property. I have by the way you describe it is going to cascade out through the entire loan. The reason it's going to cascade out is because most underwriters at most companies, in fact, I can't say all, but it's almost all, they're going to go onto the internet for most things. They're going to search for your employment that way. They're going to look at the house that way. And what are they going to do? They're going to pull up Realtor.com or Zillow.com or maybe Redfin.com, just one of those places. They're going to pull up a copy of what that listing looks like on that website and they're going to print it. That goes in the file. And most underwriters do this for most files. Now, in this case, we have two houses. And in those two houses, they are virtually identical. House 1 and House 2. They both have a ranch-style home, finished basement, comparable square footages, but we all know the basement square footage is always going to be slightly smaller than the main level square footage for two main reasons. Concrete is thicker than 2x6 or 2x4 walls, and there's usually a utility room that's not finished. So finished square footage on the basement matters, that it's slightly smaller. And by the way, I've talked over and over again about those 6,000 pages of rules and regulations. This is where you start to see a cascade of those rules. Now, house number 1 closes fairly quickly. The listing description is clean when we get it. It's legally a single-family home. They're both legally single-family homes, but they're both kind of built out in such a way where it could be an ADU or maybe it could be a duplex, and there's questions that are there, okay? Now, again, house number 1, clean listing description. Underwriter goes in, gets a copy of the Realtor.com or the Zillow.com thing. They print it out, they put it in the file. We get an appraisal that comes in. That appraisal has a few revisions. The revisions are done, in and out, done, closed in about 3 weeks or so. Easy, easy deal. House number 2, similar borrower, similar sellers, similar property, similar everything. That listing description raises questions. It is marketed as a duplex, 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 and it's all over the listing. Oh, it's a duplex, etc., etc. Well, it's legally a single family home, but it's being marketed as a duplex. Well, of course, the appraisal comes back, and the appraisal comes back as single family residence. Why? Because that's what it is. Now, there's a door inside, and that door has a lock on it, and that starts to raise questions. And you've got to be very careful when you're doing a government loan or even regular financing. And if you have a house that is not presenting itself in such a way of the legal status. And the biggest offenders of this is the old Victorian homes that the homeowners have changed into 3 and 4 unit houses. I've seen in some cases where they take a Victorian house and they turn it into 5 or 6 units, not realizing that they just created a commercial building. But it's still legally a regular house, and then they just try to get past it by going A, B, C, D, E, F, or whatever. But in all reality, on the listing side, you got to be very careful about what you put in writing and coaching your sellers to make sure that they have the property in such a condition that matches the legal status of that home. Well, anyways, on this other house, and the sellers were very patient. The listing and buyer's agents were patient. The buyer was exceptionally patient on it. But if the description doesn't match the appraisal, which doesn't match the legal entity, it starts to raise red flags. Well, in this particular instance, without going into too much detail, we had revision and revision and revision and revision and revision. Now, it didn't help that in the case of house number 2, the appraisal comes in and the appraiser goes on vacation. You know, people need vacation, no fault there. But at the same time, it just adds a little bit of a delay. This whole thing got really complicated, and this whole story is extremely complicated. So the easiest way to state it is this. If you have a listing, you've got to make sure that that description is matching the property type, the legal property type, and also make sure when you're getting a little bit salesy with your writing that you might want to reel that in a little bit in areas where it would make sense to reel it in or not. Just up to you guys if you want to do that or not. But it's going to make the closing process so much easier. Now, if you want to go over specifics on your listing, If it's a single family home, duplex, threeplex, or however it's presenting on the listing side, just give us a call. Talk to one of the loan officers here. We'll walk you through the Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie rules, the FHA rules, VA rules. They all have different rules in relation to properties, especially when you're looking at house with an ADU. Now, house with an ADU, there's ADU rules. Okay, in this particular deal, we got it through as a house with an ADU. Now, the ADU rules are the following. The ADU must be smaller in square footage, and the ADU must be shorter in height. Those are your two basic rules. So as long as the ADU is shorter and or smaller, then you're usually fine. Well, in this particular case, again, part of those revisions going back and forth, the appraisal, and a lot of appraisers do this, they're going to list that the basement square footage is the same square footage as the top square footage, and then they need extra notes. Well, what is the finished square footage? Then they get those notes in. It's like, okay, but what about this door? What about these things? And there's another key concept there, which is called the expectation of privacy. And again, I've re-recorded this a bunch of times, so in my mind, I've already covered all this. So, but this is very important, expectation of privacy. In order for a house to be legally a duplex, threeplex, fourplex, house with an ADU, whatever that is, there's a legal term for expectation of privacy. What that means is I can go into the basement unit, I can lock that door and expect that nobody can come in. I can expect privacy in my little area, in my unit, if you will. So if you have a home on the listing side and it is legally a single family house, but when the appraiser goes out and they see something that looks like there's an expectation of privacy, or there's some flag on it that looks like, hey, this could be a 2 or 3 or 4 unit home, there is an expectation of privacy, you need to make sure you kibosh that right away. Make sure the sellers are aware, hey, these doors don't look that great. This thing looks like a fourplex, even though it's a single family home, or a duplex, or whatever it is. So you got to make sure that you're aware of what that house looks like, how it's marketed, the expectation of privacy. Is it going to appraise as a house with an ADU? Is it going to appraise as a duplex? Is it legally a single family home? Is it legally a duplex? All of this matters. Most importantly for your listing agents out there, this really matters in the language you're using in the description of the property. So if you keep that description clean, then usually you're going to have a good appraisal and you're usually going to have good underwriting. But if that description is messy, then you're going to have other issues. By the way, the biggest offenders of these description problems on the lending side is not single family to duplex, it's actually ranch properties. You'd be surprised how many people will have a listing and it has 40 or 80 acres and they're like, oh yeah, come out here, start a ranch, do this stuff, ranch. But in all reality, lending, Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, you can't have any evidence, and I'm summarizing here, but you can't have evidence of active farming or revenue from ranching and farming. It's part of the loan guidelines. So you got to be very careful with your marketing and the reality of what that property is. If you have a listing and that listing is legally a single family or duplex or something, but it's built out to be differently, a duplex or threeplex or whatever it is, call us. We will walk you through it before you get under contract on that puppy. Okay? But yeah, anyways, tale of two homes. One closes fast, one closes slow. A lot of complication, a lot of rules, a lot. There was a lot. So we can go over that if you give us a call, if you have a listing that's kind of similar to that. Anyways, Mike Florin, this is the week of the 4th of July. We will be open this weekend, but not on the 4th of July. But rates are low. They're downward trending. If you've got buyers, right now is a pretty good time. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Have a good day. Bye.